What's up, guys? Thank you for joining us on Between Two Skis with Into the Pine.
Today, we're actually going to break down rocker and camber and what they do for you, what they look like, what they are.
Right? It's amazing how many questions we get every day, going around the shops in the mountains and just stuff on what ski technology is. And
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Trent, but I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily understand the definition of rocker and camber super well.
Totally. Well, and another thing they don't really understand is like how more or less of it can affect your ski and affect the style of ski, right? So if you have lots of rocker in the back, what's that going to do for you? If you have lots of camber underfoot and not a lot of rocker, what does that look like, right? And that's really what we wanted to talk about today and how that feels when you're skiing.
Yep, 100%. That's exactly it. So let's just start out. We're going to break down camber for you guys. We'll start there, and that's one of the more simpler designs to understand. And then we'll kind of go into what reverse camber looks like, also known as rocker. You're going to hear that term floating around equally within the shops and when you're looking at skis, right? So the basic, simple way to think about camber, and you'll see this when you're looking at anything like woodworking, people use this across all industries, is camber is the arcing or bending of wood into an archer, like an arch-shaped form.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And what that does for you when you're skiing is that bridge shape will actually collapse and the edge of your ski will bite and grip the snow. And that's what gives you good edge hold. And so then when you have sharp edges, you can really feel the bite and the grab of the ski so you can enjoy your turns better. That's what the camber does for you.
Exactly. So I'm going to grab you a ski here so we can kind of show you what that looks like. All right. We got here with us today one of my personal favorite skis, which is the Volcal Revolt 104. We're going to break down the rocker on these skis as well in a sec here. But when you're talking camber, like Trent is saying, what you actually get is where your binding is located is right generally in the center or near mid-center of where that camber is in the ski, right? So you have that arc shape from the ski, and when you push on it and you step on that ski, it's going to flex into that snow. The best thing about camber for a skier, in my personal opinion, is the energy that it puts underneath your feet. Right?
Well, and it can also give you that energy back, right? Because when you're going into a turn and that camber is flexed, when you come out of that turn, that camber will give you some pop back to help you get into your next turn, give you some of your energy back. So the more aggressive the camber is, the more energy you're going to get back, the more pop you're going to get back. But grab both those and put them base to base so you can see different skis have a different amount of camber and a different amount of rocker. If I'm remembering correctly, these have a good amount of camber, but a ton of early rise. So early rise is another term that is really just referring to where your rocker begins. So on these skis, it really begins here, right? This is your contact point, and then it's starting to gradually rise up.
Right. So now, Trent, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people come into the ski shops asking, like, is camber, do I want a ski that has camber, or should I look for something that's all like rockered if I'm like a beginner skier? Right. What would you answer to that?
Right. And that's a wonderful question. Really, camber is our friends, right? And early skier or beginner skiers, they're going to usually be put on a ski that has more camber to it. And the reason that is they want to be able to get in and out of turns really easily, really fluid. If they're in pizza, right, like obviously you're like, we don't want to be skiing in pizza all day. That hurts your legs. But once you get into where you're really parallel, that camber is going to help beginners move from one turn to the next and really feel how a ski is going to respond. And so then when they get into, or when they get on a pair of skis that has more rocker, they're used to how a ski is going to feel. There's actually, a little side note, there's actually more and more beginners are getting put on skis that have loads of rocker in the tip and the tail, and they don't really learn how to be really good with their form and their stance, right? Because more rocker in the tip and the tail make the ski more forgiving, and we'll get into that. But if you want to become a good skier, ski like you're skiing a ski that's got a lot of camber to it, because it's going to help you maintain your form.
Yeah, no, I like that. It's a great point to show. And especially, you know, we're more of a ski oriented guys ourselves, but we've also spent time with snowboards too, and we're excited to talk about that. So I wanted to mention on that quick note with beginner skiers, noticing that a lot of them are using extensive rockered soft skis that aren't really gripping the snow. You'll see that same thing with snowboards, and I think that's kind of where we cross over a little bit, where that rocker shape that we're about to get into explaining to you guys, how that lifts the edges off the snow, right? So you're not getting that same grip feeling. It's a little bit more of a wash. Generally, a lot of beginner snowboarders start there, but it is interesting because I know in snowboarding, some people are afraid to jump into camber, right?
Yeah.
They think it's very aggressive. It's not something to do unless you're a good boarder, right? Which is really unique to me because coming from skiing, I hopped on a board. The first thing I wanted was camber.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted that feeling. I wanted to feel secure on the snow. I didn't want to feel like I was washing through my turns. Right. So I think that's a great point with, especially as beginner skiers, not to be afraid of using camber technology. It is your friend.
It is your friend, and it's going to benefit you. So let's jump over to rocker and what that is. So it's really the shape, right? The opposite of camber. So it's the bow in the opposite direction. It's usually it's found in the tip and the tails. There are a couple full rockered skis, and they don't hug the snow. They don't bite the snow the same way as a camber ski would.
Right, more of like a specialty ski in a way for a skier that really is looking for that kind of freestyle wash style.
That like
turn.
surf feel.
Yeah, super fun.
Yeah.
You got to get on one at least once to see if you like it, but yeah.
But they don't bite the same, right?
Exactly.
And so then really like all these ski manufacturers, they are trying to find the blend that will magnify somebody's style, right? So actually the Ben Chetler 120s that we have here are a good example of Chris Ben Chetler's style. And the reason that is you can see you've got a good amount of camber, but then you've got just tons of rocker, right? Like, so this ski is actually broken out 30% rocker, 40% camber, 30% rocker. And you're centered on this ski, or pretty close to the very center of that ski. And it makes it so that ski really pivots in the snow. It doesn't get bogged down. But then on groomed runs, it doesn't have the same bite or the same reaction, because you just have less edge contacting the snow.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about rocker here, what its benefits are on different parts of the mountain. I know specifically a lot of people look for rocker when you're talking about soft snow, float, things like that. I always like to think of rocker, when I was first learning the terms as a kid, it reminded me of like rocking a baby or a rocking chair, right? You have this bend kind of like up near the tips and generally the tails. Tails all the time on snowboards, sometimes on skis, depending on the type of ski you're using. Right. Fun part is like you're gonna have rocker on every ski, but there's different types as far as using aggressive swoop in the rocker.
Yeah.
Right. So how do those affect? Will you break those down on how those affect your ski style and what it feels like? Because both have their unique qualities and they're not anything to be afraid of. Not crazy differences, but
so really, let's start with like your beginner ski or even a rental ski is a perfect example. Rental skis have rocker or camber from like here all the way down, and usually they have like a flat tail. And that's just to allow the most amount of effective edge. And then they just have a little bit of rocker in the tip. And really that's for if there's any soft snow, it helps that skier stay on top. But the less rocker you have in the tip, when you get into softer snow, the easier it is for you to get bogged down in anything really deep.
Right. So more rocker, easier to stay up on top.
Right.
Helps direct the flow of the snow and the water from the snow, right? Coming up, pushing the tips up, going down towards the tail of the skis, right? An interesting thing to talk about here too, which I love, is the discussion on twin tip skis.
Yes.
Right?
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a fun one to get into.
Yeah.
And you guys will know, everyone wants a twin tip ski as a kid or teen or whatever, because you get into it and it's so cool, right?
Yeah.
It just looks so cool. The designs get real more fun.
You get bigger rooster tails on your turns, right? Yeah.
Exactly, right? Now, what I love to talk about too, though, is what tail rocker does for a skier.
Right.
Besides skiing backwards, which we all think, oh, I don't need a twin tip because I
don't
ski
ski backwards.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're gonna hear that all the time. Right. So what are your thoughts? Go ahead.
Yeah. So I love this topic. So twin tip skis actually make the ski more forgiving, right? With that, back to that rental ski that has a flat tail, it's really to, like I said, teach the beginner how to get their form down. Then you give them more rocker in the tail, and once they have their form down, it's easier for them to skirt their turns, right? So they're here, and instead of going and finishing their turn and arcing to the next turn, they just slosh out.
Yeah.
And it's easier because you have less edge contacting the snow because that ski is turned up, right? In the back. So it makes the ski more forgiving, like I said, and easier to pivot, swivel, and maneuver.
Yeah. That's what I love about them too.
Yeah.
You're right. I think it's really interesting to look at, because oftentimes the turning radius on even like the ratings and everything on the ski that's twin tip will oftentimes be shorter, like tighter turns, even though it's not a carved turn, like you're saying, right? And that's probably the reason why right there we know is because it is what I like to call like a slush turn, or like a sliding turn, where you're really pivoting that ski sideways and letting it slide down the edge of the mountain, right? And you can kind of engage your edges more or less on the sides there, right? The other thing I love that we talked about was like with powder skiing, right? Powder skiers like twin tip skis often as well. You almost will always find a powder ski as a twin tip, right? And there is a reason for that, as we talked about, like the snow coming up underneath the tip, helping to elevate that tip above the snow, right? You also, in that twin tip ski, when we talk about that rocking style, right? Well, when you want your tips to go up, what happens to your tail?
Right? It's going to want to
It goes
down
the opposite way. Exactly. So that helps elevate the tip of the ski, but you also are skiing a little bit more in the snow, like a little bit more set back in a chair form, rather than like driving the ski down into the mountain. Right. So we oftentimes use the word playful, especially a lot with twin tip skis. There's different constructions of the wood that help go in with that, but you will get more playfulness with a twin tip ski.
And one thing to note on that is, like, we don't want to be back seated in our ski, right? That's not going to benefit. That's going to hurt our feet. That's going to cause a lot of problems. And these skis that are more centered, they really want someone who's not actually overly forward on their ski. They want someone who has good posture, straight up and down, because that's when that ski will swivel and pivot, and you can really use that rocker to its fullest effect.
Right. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that wraps up a good portion of what camber and rocker really is. To give one more comparison before we leave, I do want to shoot over to one other ski design that is, or like I said, it's ski snowboard design that isn't talked about a whole ton. And for the snowboarders out there, skiers, you will hear this, so that's why I want to kind of get the info around, which is flying V, right? Or you'll get rocker, camber, rocker. Those terms, what they stand out as. Rocker, camber, rocker, I mean, what you see in front of you, right? All we're saying is rocker, camber, rocker. The degrees to those, as far as the percentage of rocker versus camber, will change.
Yeah, they can vary depending on the style of the ski.
Exactly. And then in snowboards, we have this unique comparison of flying V, which that is going to basically, it looks like a wave, right? And the reason you don't see that on skis, and you should never go to a ski shop and ask for a flying V ski because you'll get laughed at, right? Is because we want to center our bindings over the camber of the ski or snowboard, right? because that camber, when you push down on it, gives you that energy, right? So a flying V construction is very similar on a snowboard, where you're going to get camber in two portions of the snowboard right underneath the feet, where you'd activate it, but in between those two portions you have a little rockered point on the board, right? And that allows for a quick swivel on a snowboard to allow turns, different styles, and cool stuff.
One more point on that is you also have, there are a couple ski manufacturers that do make triple cambered skis, and they put a little bit of camber here and here to give a little extra bite. So that's another one.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much.
Yep, thanks for joining us today. We hope you got a lot out of our sessions here. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them. We love to answer them.
Yeah.
And Trent and I really take those to heart as far as what we can do for you and bring to the table. And if you want to learn more, we have different courses we're going to be offering, for basic questions to advanced courses, so you can really take them at your pace.
So thanks for joining us, and go journey into the pine.